You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show, ideas for happy horsekeeping.
Temple Grandin is a world-renowned animal behaviorist and professor of animal science at Colorado State University. She blazed many trails toward the humane treatment of livestock and is the author of more than 60 scientific papers on animal behavior. Dr. Grandin also has autism and has done as much for neurodivergent people as she has for animal welfare. There's a brand new inspirational documentary about her called An Open Door, and it was created by today's guests, John Festervand, Development Director at Colorado State, and John Barnhardt, Emmy Award-winning cinematographer. In this episode, we talk about the making of the documentary and offer a sneak peek into the life and work of an incredible woman. So listen in. This is episode 146 of the Stall and Stable Show, brought to you by American Stalls. Today is Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. I'm your host, Helena Harris. Please support our sponsors as they help make this show possible. Why have we partnered with American Stalls? 2 reasons. They believe that finding the right product for their customers first requires listening to their customers. You can't suggest a stall front style or a type of metal if you don't have any context for its use. Having a meaningful conversation with their customers about what they want, what they do, and what kind of horses they have is the first step in finding a good product fit. And reason number 2, American Stalls believes in education. Like me, they believe that an educated customer is a happy customer. Empowering you with information about what goes into barn design and stall construction means that you have the knowledge to make the right decisions for your project. And that means you end up with a barn that really works for your horses and for you. To see what American Stalls has to offer, visit them online at americanstalls.com or find them on Instagram and Facebook. So a few months ago, or it could have been a few weeks ago, who knows, time is like a big blur these days. Something came across my news feed, it was either Facebook or Instagram, and it was a promotional poster, it was a graphic about this new documentary about Dr. Temple Grandin, who I am a huge fan of. And I got really excited because, like I said, I'm a fan. I follow her work. I've seen the other films and documentaries about her, and I just got really excited that something was coming out in the world gets to hear more about Dr. Grandin. And when I went to go find the documentary, where can I watch this? Can I stream it? Is it in production? Where is this? I need to see it. I couldn't find it. So on the promotional graphic, there was a link to a website. I followed the link. And on the website, I found the name of the executive producer, and I sent him an email. I said, hey, I'm really excited about this. Where can I find it? Where can I watch it? And he gave me the inside scoop. It is not yet available for major release, but it is playing in film festivals and private screenings around the country. And I said, well, I really want to know more. And I'd love for my listeners to get ready for this when it becomes widely available. How'd you like to come on the show and let's talk about it? He very graciously agreed, and at the same time allowed me a private screening of the film. When I watched this thing, first of all, I watched it with Buck. I said, you have to see this with me because it's going to be awesome, and I can't watch it by myself. I'm going to be too excited. Well, this thing so far exceeded my expectations. It so captured the essence of Temple Grandin, not just who she is, but her work and the people who work with her, the people who love her, the people who appreciate and respect her. It really captured something so beautiful, and I was triply inspired after seeing the film. And so here we are. Today I get to talk to John Festervand and John Barnhardt, who were instrumental in bringing this magic to life for all of us who either love Temple Grandin right now or need to love her. So let's welcome John and John to the show. Hello to John and John. The two of you have been instrumental in bringing this new documentary about Dr. Grandin to the world, and it's been a lot of work, although I'm sure it's been a labor of love. Those of us who are fans of Dr. Grandin, thank you for those efforts. When did you start on this project?
Well, I met John in 2019 and I met Dr. Grandin in 2020. And I knew I wanted to work with John on a project. I wasn't exactly sure. And so I met our talent and our director, John, before I met Dr. Grandin. And I knew right off the rip that he and I wanted to work together in some shape, form, or fashion. And whenever I met Temple and sort of kind of understanding her story and the legacy that she's leaving at CSU is just unbelievable. But I wanted to have a little bit more involvement in that. And I wanted to elevate her legacy a little bit more. And I thought the right person to do that was with John. And by doing this film, and he did just an absolutely beautiful job. The students that we hired to work on this film had incredible learning experience. And yeah, it was just a joy to watch and to be a part of.
John Barnhardt, did you feel that initial connection as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like, we're different in the way we approach stuff, but like the way we approach stuff is, we help each other get to a common goal. So the minute I met John, I knew that I wanted to work with him too. My time in South Carolina in Charleston was kind of maxing out, I think, and I needed a change. I needed to get closer to home. I'm from Colorado, so I wanted to bring back what I learned in Charleston, South Carolina, in the film industry, and try to start some kind of film movement in Fort Collins, which is like my favorite town and means a lot to me. And when I talked to John and the way we connected, and I had lived in the autism space doing a project called Surfers Healing with Izzy Pakowitz, so I kind of knew how to maneuver around that. And so when John brought up Temple Grandin, and then brought that I'm probably going to get back into teaching a little bit, or at least, not hired by the school as a teacher, but be a work study underneath me, but I could teach people how to make documentaries and kind of guide them to give them real world experience, which I think, hands-on experience always helps. So I thought it was the best opportunity for me to become a better filmmaker and do projects with impact and have an influence on the autism community and the students that the college gave me to work with. So yeah, I was super grateful to meet John Festervand.
I like to think that the universe tumbles around and every once in a while it delivers an opportunity. When my daughter was 12, she said to me, "Mom, the universe gives us opportunities. It's up to us to take advantage of them." And, the stories are there, right? The opportunities are there. There are so many fascinating stories out there, but it takes someone who's paying attention and someone with passion to take those stories, reinterpret them, and bring them to the world. And then finding someone who can put a team together to tell that story in the best way possible. That's really hard to do. And you guys did it. My husband, Buck, and I had the privilege of watching an Open Door together. And honestly, I was not prepared for how drawn into it I was going to get, or for the production quality. I mean, this is exquisite. Did you know that you were in that space when you were filming this? That you were creating something of a masterpiece? At least it seems to me.
I don't know if I was thinking I would create a masterpiece, but I'm still a student of film. So anything I approached as far as with cinematic grammar, or like I study, I had an aesthetic I wanted to do, and I have a few directors of photography that I wanted it to look like. So I was very deliberate in my approach. I try to shoot for the edit. And what I learned, by doing documentaries is that you go for 70% and you let 30% of the movie, that other 30%, you let the movie kind of tell you what to do. But I was very deliberate on how I wanted the movie to look. I wanted it to be very cinematic. I didn't want it to look like a video. I didn't want it to look like something you'd watch on Live 5 News or whatever. I wanted it to be a movie. I wanted people to be kind of immersed in it. Temple was a visual thinker, so the movie had to be visually there and had to be engaging. I think the subjects that she talks about are somewhat hard to follow a little bit, so it had to flow a lot. And I used this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin to help me kind of guide me through the creative process of how to be immersed in the project, but also how to walk away. And I had a very definitive cinematic style I wanted to do. And it was getting everybody on that same page. This is how we shoot the interviews. This is our B-roll. This is what we're focused on. And then my buddy, Josh McClain, who's one of the best musicians I've ever seen, scored the music. So I went up to Oregon and we watched the scenes, and, we scored it right there. He'd watch it, score it, and then he would kind of took it to the next level. And I think music and sound is the glue that holds your movie together. And, we went in with a plan. We didn't just shoot and save it in the edit. We shot for the edit. It was like pretty deliberate. I knew the ending. I knew the beginning. I knew where I was trying to get. And it was just a matter of sometimes letting that movie do its own thing.
It will be interesting to see how different people interpret different things from the film. What I took away from it was that you really captured what makes Temple Grandin so special, so unique on this planet. I don't want to say different because we're all different, but where she started in her life as a young woman and where she is now is such an empowering journey as both a woman and a neurodivergent woman. And being a longtime fan of hers, but not being a student at Colorado State, I always felt myself longing for more of her wisdom, her knowledge. And then this film comes along, and there it is. Not just more of her, but more of her. What she thinks of things, how she feels, her curiosity. The film is like a sneak peek inside the world of Temple Grandin.
Yeah, the most important thing is that we wanted people to be reintroduced to Temple. Like, people know Temple from 27 years, like they watched the Claire Danes thing and they see that it was basically took her to 27 years old or whatever before she got her doctorate. Or you watch like the Errol Morris movie and he's amazing. One of my favorite documentary filmmakers. But if you watch his movie Stairway to Heaven, it makes Temple seem a little frantic. And maybe she was at that time, but she's very stoic now. And between that movie and now, she's written 17 books. And we wanted it to be like a reintroduction to Temple. So as much as people could feed off of those ideas in the movie and gather kind of the new thoughts, that Temple's more relevant than she probably ever has been right now, because she's dealing with neurodiversity. She's giving people a chance to say, you know what, I suck at algebra. Where back in the day, if you sucked at algebra, you get put in remedial classes, even when I was a kid. And she's also letting you say, I have dyslexia. So what? I'm going to use it to my advantage. She will say, don't let autism define you. She's saying, I have autism. Check it out. Here's how I do. Here's my process. And she's giving people an opportunity to use what they have and be the best they can and not be afraid to kind of dig in, like deep dive into it. So the whole movie you should walk out of the movie thinking, well, one, I could dig my heels in if I believe in something and persevere. And two, I'm going to be okay if I think differently. And that's sort of what we want people to digest after they watch the movie. Is we want people to walk away. I always want to make movies that when you leave the theater and you're driving or walking home, that's what you're thinking about. That when you're sitting down and having a dinner or talking to somebody, you're talking about the movie and how it made you view something differently. And with Temple, the main thing is she's going to make people think differently and realize that it's okay to be a different thinker. Meaning not everyone's a verbal thinker, not everyone is a pattern thinker, not everyone is a visual thinker. And it's okay to be a mixture of those or be just one of those. And it's fine.
Well, she makes me feel like it can be more than fine.
In the 70s and 80s, even when I was growing up, man, you didn't know how to do math. You were already like shunned. And then I don't think math defines you. And Temple is a great example of that. There are different ways to make the world more progressive and the further your impact on that world.
Several years ago, I attended one of Dr. Grandin's speaking engagements at Tufts Veterinary School. And during her talk, she discusses the challenge of math requirements for incoming veterinary students and how it would eventually compromise the number of veterinarians practicing because it would discourage potential applicants. People who could otherwise become outstanding veterinarians. I think we're feeling the effects of that prediction today. At the time, I was absolutely shocked that someone of her stature would make a statement like that or believe that. That inspired me. Someone was actually giving voice to the fact that you don't have to be good at all of the things in order to be good at what you do or to move the needle forward in an area that's important to you. For example, animal welfare or supporting neurodivergence. And I'm just so happy that your film brought her voice forward again. John Festervand, tell us about the Temple Grandin Equine Center at Colorado State University. That also plays a part in her role in essentially changing the world these days. Tell us about the center.
We have our Temple Grandin Equine Center that's in Fort Collins and at Denver Spur. They offer therapeutic riding 5 days a week. They work with community members. They work with practitioners. It's just a wonderful places for children to connect with their horses and get them out doing something is what Temple talks about. And one of my favorite lines in there that I've heard from Adam Dario, and he's repeating it from Temple Grandin, is that the horses were my salvation. And I love walking over there. I love going to see the horses. I love going to see the clients. Just everything that happens there, it feels like it's just magic. Supporting Adam Dario as the director of the Temple Grandin Equine Center, Dr. Katie Peters, who heads up research for that program. I mean, they're changing lives, and those are the kind of things that you want to get behind. That's the real deal. It's hard to describe sometimes the incredible work that they're doing. There really is, and everybody on that staff, not just those two, but there's a lot of people that make that place really run well, and it's a great extension for legacy.
Speaking of community, John, you mentioned that the film was made with the help of CSU students. Tell us about that.
I was a broadcasting major in college, and I loved my undergrad experience. What made it so great was that I had hands-on learning experience. As you're doing this podcast, you can read about it in a book. You're the one that has to get yourself set up. You got to get your business set up. You got to do all these things. You need that hands-on learning experience, and there's only so much classroom that you need before you get out and actually do the work. John and I both subscribe to that type of philosophy. We want to make it a great experience for students. We're really proud that the students that came to work on us, we think it changed their lives. That's why we're educators. That's why we're there, is to have impact, and not just in a film, but on the students that are there as well, making sure that they feel a part of it, that there's ownership. I mean, they spent 1,000 hours working with John, and that's a testament to how great he is as a teacher, and to watch the development of all these students throughout the course of this project that was inspiring in itself. And to see how their lives have changed since making this. I mean, we have some students that are in grad school that are wanting to be filmmakers. John did a phenomenal job, and there's absolutely nothing that I would do different. It was great. I'll let John maybe talk a little bit about his experience in working with the students.
I wanted to make movies since I was 9 years old when I saw The Road Warrior with my father. My father, when we walked out of the theater, I said, I think I want to make movies. And he said, good. And from that moment on, he fueled all of that. We'd watch movies. He would talk about them because he was a photographer. And then when I went to Colorado State, you either go to film school and you learn how to shoot 16 millimeter or 35. There was no digital cameras. And so when I went to teach in Trident Tech, I realized the impact that hands-on learning had. And then we were switching into the digital world. So when I came back here, it was important to me to train the future filmmakers, because what I'm realizing is without that hands-on experience, they're not going to make it in this business. This business is tough. It's not kind sometimes. And it's sort of, you got to really tug at people's shirts to climb up the ladder. And so my goal is always to make sure that I'm setting my students up for success. Whoever's working for me, it doesn't even matter if you're a student. I'm trying to set them up for success when they're not with me. The same way that I feel like some people have done for me is like, I have huge mentors that have carried me through the tough times to make sure that when they're not around, that I could carry other people through the tough times. And so, as I round out the 4th season of my life, as I'm, 52 years old and I got maybe 20 more years of work. And I think my job is like Temple's, is to give back what I've learned or what I've experienced. So the people that are under me, or the people that want to make movies, tell visual stories, know how to get themselves out of tough situations by what they've learned. I'm not going to write 17 books like Temple. I'm not going to write 500 articles like Temple, but maybe my legacy or impact would be maybe in these film students that come through my documentary program, if you want to call that. I'm really proud to be with CSU. I've always dreamed about working on the campus and teaching students and making documentaries in a town that I love. So it's important for me that they walk away with the best education they can get, and that they're the best on campus. So I don't require a second place when you work with me. I want it to be competitive. I want people to realize that you have to have Division I athlete mentality to make it in this business. I think a lot of people have lost that throughout the last 15, 20 years, that people need to be competitive, that people don't get participation awards, that this isn't a business that does that, and you got to be prepared for it, and you got to be able to have a tough skin. And that's sort of my approach with all the students, is to make sure that they're able to take criticism and make a living doing what they love by creating visual stories and art.
This documentary takes the viewer in many different places in Temple Grandin's life and with the people who work with her today, right? But well beyond her 27 years that the HBO movie took us. And in making the film, you have to have a different eye, I would imagine. There's filmmaker, there's creator, there's editor, documentalist. There's all these different hats you have to wear and personas that you have to adopt when you're making a film like this. How do you balance all of those pieces of yourself as you lead a project like this?
Well, I think when you approach a story first, you got to be wanting to tell that story, and you got to invest yourself in that story. You got to immerse yourself in it. So I immersed myself in the documentaries and immersed myself into the philosophy of Colorado State, that we're a college that is based on grit and heart and hard work. We're a blue collar school. We want to get our hands dirty, and that's what Temple does. So with that philosophy is what I apply to the movie. I'm always emotionally connected to the subject. I'm always emotionally connected to getting what people want, because if I feel it, then I feel like people will feel it when they're watching it on the screen. Where I become the objective movie maker and I look at it from a different stance is when I'm editing. I'm the last door between the film and the viewer. So I have to be objective. I take suggestions. I'll get it stripped down as raw as I can. And if someone says, man, that shot's not working, if they could tell me why, then I'll probably cut it, because the project stops becoming about you. It starts becoming about the project. But you've already invested all that emotional content. You've already taken the time to make sure that the shots convey that, or that the subject conveys that, the music conveys that, that your pacing conveys that. So when it gets out there, all that stuff should be there. But at some point, you got to shut that down, and you got to be an objective editor, and you got to be as if you're viewing it in the theater. You have to be brutal to yourself, so it's a little easier for the audience to digest.
Yeah. My husband, I don't want to say he laughs, but he kind of shakes his head in amazement when I spend, I can record a podcast episode 45 minutes and I'll spend 3 days editing it, because it just has to be, you have to be that analytical. You have to switch from being immersed in it to being objective about it. And I can relate to that challenge. I want to switch gears just a little bit and ask you about how Dr. Grandin felt about this project. I mean, you're not going to say she wanted no part of it and we had to drag her kicking and screaming, but what were her thoughts about kind of revealing parts of herself at this point in her career?
She was awesome to work with. She opened up her schedule to us when she was in town and met us where we were. We went to her house. She came to campus. I mean, she was all in. It was great to have that type of support. As we're having this conversation, I'm sitting here thinking about the first time we did an interview at her house, and 7 students coming over to join us for lighting and sound, and everybody trying to find a place in the staircase and somewhere just to be around so that they could participate. It was great. She loved seeing the students and their process. She asked them questions all the time about how you enjoying this? What are you liking about it? What do you want to do after you graduate? She's 100% on board. And yeah, she was great to work with.
I would have a hard time not taking her aside and asking her 100 million questions. I don't know. It's just so easy for modern society to lose focus on the roots of planet Earth. And, I just feel like Colorado State is doing that, and you're doing it in a big way. How do you see that bigger picture, Dr. Grandin's work, and then this documentary? How do you see those 3 things playing together?
Dr. Grandin's reputation is global. She has people all over the world, and much like Colorado State, we have a global brand and a global reputation. But I think Temple's legacy at Colorado State is going to be one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful, faculty member to have ever come across our campus, and that's since 1870. That's a long time. A couple of years ago, but even before we started doing this, when I was introduced into the College of Ag, I helped raise some money we had a statue brought to campus in the Department of Animal Sciences. And there's a nice little display area in the Animal Science Department with a life-size bronze statue of her there. And it's important to say that because it's the first statue of any faculty member on campus, much less the first statue of any female on campus. And so I think she has really enjoyed being a teacher and a mentor and having the impact that she's had on students. I mean, that's what her legacy is about, is how many students can I impact? How many families can I touch? And she's done that. I mean, she was just celebrated as a distinguished professor last year. It's the highest honor that any university faculty member can attain. I know that she has enjoyed her teaching career there, and she's going to keep doing it as long as she can. She will never miss a class. I think in working with her schedule, you could always count on her being in Fort Collins on Tuesday, because she will never miss a class. She gives everything to those students. She's there early. She stays late. She works with them on their projects. Every one of them has her cell number. They can call them anytime she wants. She is accessible to her students. I think she is the living embodiment of what a land-grant institution is. And so if John and I could elevate her legacy, and I think we're doing that through this film, and I think that's one of the things that we're wanting to accomplish.
Yeah, you get lost in the story. You get lost in her presence and the inspiration, being mesmerized, being attentive, because there's something you need to pay attention to. What she's saying is what's important, and what people are saying about her is what's important. And I think the bigger picture of her legacy is that she has created understanding where it was sorely lacking. Understanding about people who think differently, but animals. The human species is so self-centered that it's really hard for us to consider anything external from ourselves. And her hug machine and her thought process about livestock was the first time anybody really vocalized, that I heard of, let's put ourselves in the animal's shoes. Let's create understanding where there is none, and then look at what we can do from that. And now the same thing is happening with neurodivergent people. What's happening here with this person, with this animal, that we just don't understand? And if we do understand, what's possible? So listeners, my horse friends, we struggle with our careers, with our horses as pets, as competitive partners. And 99.9% of the time, that struggle is because there's something we don't understand. And if you want to get a grasp of what it means to understand something that's otherwise just beyond your reach, I think you need to go find Dr. Grandin's work. Start with the movie, which we'll link to. Read her papers, her books, and even before you do all that, make some time to find an open door. This documentary will inspire you. Where can we find it? Because I know it's not available yet in all places.
So we're currently seeking distribution. We want to get this out there, but we also understand that it takes patience. There's a lot of great movies being made, and so we're sort of going a couple of different routes. We've been in film festivals since August of last year. So you can find us at several film festivals, really. And we do some private screenings, but for right now, we're working through the film festival routes. We're in the month of June, we're going to be in Vegas at the Nevada Women's Film Festival. We're going to be at the Southside Film Festival in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania in June.
Well, we'll be sure to share those in the show notes. Anything else you want to wrap up before we go? I mean, I could spend another hour talking to you guys about this, but we're a half-hour show.
Just one thing. I mean, I think we hope people get out of the movie on top of everything we've just talked about, is that, Temple is probably one of the most important scientists alive right now, as far as I'm concerned, because she's dealing with animal welfare and neurodiversity and education all at the same time, and moving all her, when she's focused on that one thing, it's 100%. And she's pumping out 17 books. And I don't even know when she writes these, right? We hang out with her all the time, and then she's like, I finished my new book. I'm like, when was that? And so I think that people just need to pay attention to what she's saying. I think that, when you cross into your 50s and maybe your late 40s or your 60s, as you think, well, maybe I'm done. Maybe this is it. And maybe this is my last run. This is my last game. And Temple's 76 years old. She's on an airplane 4 days a week. She's doing lectures. She's writing books. She's changing people's lives. So it's, I've always said this, it's just not how you start, it's how you finish. You just might come into your own in your 60s or 70s or your 80s. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola just did another movie. He's 84 years old. He got a standing ovation, and it's going to premiere at Cannes. He's 84. But if you dig your heels in, you dig deep, and you go with that Colorado State grit and heart, man, you're going to accomplish more than you could possibly imagine. And I think that's what this movie is trying to say. Don't give up. push forward, make sure to noise the people that say that you can't do it, and then write 17 books, 500 articles, and get like 71 movies and documentaries made about yourself, and you'll be fine.
Good advice. Well, thank you to both of you, John Barnhardt and John Festervand from Colorado State University. Listeners, the documentary is An Open Door. It is about Dr. Temple Grandin. I strongly suggest that you find it and go see it. Thanks to both of you for joining me, and please extend my gratitude to Dr. Grandin because she has been an inspiration for this old girl who's going back to school.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
This really is a cool documentary, listeners, and we're going to post links in this episode's show notes, so hopefully you can find a film festival or a screening near you. Many thanks to this week's sponsor, American Stalls. Please find out what they do by going to our website at stallandstable.com/support. They help make this podcast possible, and I'd love it if you would show your support by learning more about what they do. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.